I'm Rimma Boshernitsan, the founder and CEO of Dialogue. Welcome to 10 by 20, a series of 10 questions discussed in 20-minute dialogues with local and international leaders doing visionary work at the intersection of people, technology, and society. Welcome, everyone. I'm pleased to introduce today's guest, Nahema Mehta, the CEO of Absolut Art, a company on a mission to democratize access to art globally and bridge the gap between artists creating and people collecting. Welcome, Nahema.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Awesome to have you. To kick us off, I'm super curious. How you grew up influence your current work? Tell us.
So I grew up a little all over the place. I grew up between Antwerp, Geneva, and Nairobi. And I think that multicultural element and that ability to navigate these different environments and cultures has influenced my work incredibly. I mean, it's I would say almost the core of what I do and what I've always been interested in is these cross-cultural conversations and how different groups of people can communicate with each other and learn from each other and bond over their similarities and differences. And I think that was really a product of the fact that that's how I had to grow up, going from one place to another. You could say nothing in common between Antwerp and Nairobi, but you'd be surprised. There are so many commonalities, and sort of being able to navigate all of those realities as you grow up and as you're creating your own identity, I think has a substantial influence on the way you interact with the world moving forward.
Totally. And you were born in Nairobi or in Antwerp?
In Geneva.
Oh, in Geneva. In Geneva. My
Yes.
goodness. Okay. Yeah.
So I spent some years in Geneva and in Antwerp, and then in Nairobi, and then I moved to New York for university. So a little bit all over the place, and my family is still all over the place,
Yeah.
and all these spread across all these different continents. So it's really allowed me to sort of keep that multicultural, multi-city feeling in life, which I love and I thrive off of.
Totally. No, I know whenever we talk about like the travels and like if especially this past year and a half, right, of just being able to not be in New York and have the opportunity to be in Switzerland is just such a nice thing, right? Just having home bases in multiple places and shaping. Yeah.
It's so nice. It's so nice to just, exactly as you say, have a home base. I think sometimes when you have family or you have friends in places, you experience the place in an entirely different way. And just being able to return home, wherever that may be, and whatever that means in those different places is wonderful. Home in New York is all about working and living life to the fullest. Home in Geneva is about sitting back and being with family and relaxing, as it is in
Mhm.
Nairobi. So they all have these different definitions and allow you to play out different facets of your personality and of your life, which is really, really a huge privilege.
Totally. And how was it going from, New York, which is more like where you normally live, to Geneva, where it's kind of relaxing and family life and spending a year and a half, but still working at the same time?
It's been interesting. Geneva is absolutely beautiful, but it's also incredibly sleepy, especially juxtaposed to New York, which is the exact opposite of sleepy, right? It's just on fire. So it was definitely an adjustment. Normally I'm here for about a week, 10 days, and it's a perfect amount of time to relax. Here I had to settle into a slower pace of life, which was a little bit difficult whilst of course, working. A lot of my team's in Sweden, so that was a really nice time difference management. It was a positive, but the pace is so much slower. Like for example, this entire summer, people are completely off. I forget that in New York, it's just go go go. But this idea that there's actually vacation, and that's how I grew up. But I somehow in adulthood lost that. So it's been nice, and I have to say that we came here with my now 2.5-year-old, and for her this pace of life and the nature, the access to the mountains and the water and the fresh air is incomparable. So I'm thrilled for her, and I'm learning to appreciate through her eyes and her activities because she's just so joyful about it all. So
No, I know the kids. It's so interesting to watch this time, like to see things through their eyes,
really.
right? It's a trip, really.
It
especially for us.
just makes you remember just how stuck we can get.
Totally. Yeah, that was one of the realizations I had on my vacation a couple weeks ago as well.
Nice.
So I know that before Absolute, like you started another company before Absolute Art, and it was also in the arts space. But generally speaking, before that, you weren't really in the arts,
Oh,
right? So you just kind of started this business. You saw an opportunity. It
yes.
got acquired by Absolute Art, and you've been the CEO for 5 years or more at
Yes.
this
Oh my
point.
goodness. Something
Oh,
like that coming on 5 years.
yeah.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about some of the questions that you're most excited about answering through your work.
I mean, the fundamental question that we ask ourselves every day is how to best provide a microphone for the cultural creators that are shaping our everyday. You know, there are so many incredible voices that are underrepresented in the arts that are really tackling every single issue that you can think about that we're talking about today, and providing moments of clarity, moments of introspection through their work. But oftentimes they just don't have the ability to share that with a wide audience, you know? And so the central question we always ask ourselves is, how do we get those incredible voices to be heard by more people and a wider variety of people? You know, there are those who will go out and seek the arts, which is fantastic, but what about all the people who don't? One of my favorite things that we did, actually, now thinking about it, was we took over part of the Lower East Side in Manhattan, and we basically asked all these different storefront owners who own their parts of their buildings if we could have the artists just create an artwork and put it up on their storefronts, on these walls, because we didn't want to go through the city, because God knows that's a lot of
Totally.
paperwork, right?
Yeah.
And we did this, and we basically created this incredible outdoor exhibition that was around the theme of how few women are represented in the arts, and sort of the theme of sexism in general, but especially within the arts. And people didn't have to walk into an exhibition, right? They were just
Mhm.
walking their neighborhood. And as they turned different corners, they would be confronted with these incredible artworks. And I remember our team would just sort of sit on the corner and listen. And some of the different conversations that were brought up, were amazing, because the artwork itself is a little bit of a distanced piece that allows for conversation to be opened up. It's non-confrontational, right? When you see an artwork, it's just begging a question or begging a thought, and then you have a conversation around it. So you could see people being like, "Oh, yeah, I wonder." You know, one of the conversations I heard was, "Yeah, it's really crazy how there's not representation in my work either." You know, and they were talking about themselves, and you just saw that this artwork offered an opening to have this conversation. So for us, it's all about how do we ensure artists from all over the world get a platform, have a microphone to enable these conversations to happen. And it's a privilege to do it. So it's a really fun job.
Totally. Well, and it's also, as you were talking, made me think about just the opportunity for creating placemaking in cities, right? And creating these like quite bigger questions as the result of not just the individual artworks that people experience, but what is the whole experience in the context of a neighborhood or a city.
Exactly.
So it's like those are
Exactly.
such important interventions that I think we don't often pay attention to, right? Just being in our daily lives, to your point about kind of kids making us see differently, right?
It's so true.
Exactly
And
right.
we worked with I don't know if you're familiar with Marcus Samuelson. He's this amazing chef in New York, and restaurant owner in general. And he is a huge supporter of the Harlem art scene. And
Mhm.
so what we did is, he has this festival called Harlem Eat Up, which is a food festival. And we said, why don't we inject art into it and bring all the great Harlem artists into the equation? And we were able to do that, again, very community focused, outdoor, bringing people in through a different lens.
Mhm.
And that's what we love to do in
That's
general.
awesome. Yeah. When do you feel as an individual CEO running a big team, when do you feel most creative or most innovative in the thinking that you're kind of pushing forward?
I think if it comes down to when I feel most creative individually, it's maybe the strange answer, but it's walking through airports.
Huh.
I feel like in these moments of transit, I'm generally alone. I generally have some headphones on, or I'm trying to be, completely on my own. And that's where I get a lot of really good thinking and ideas going. Because what else do you have to do
Mhm.
between going to gates, there are only so many podcasts you can listen to or anything like that, and you're walking. So I don't know. And I feel like everyone thinks you're offline when you're traveling for the
Mhm.
most part, right? And so it is a moment of respite that allows you to reflect, and kind of the indulgence to reflect,
Yeah.
which is really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Also, when I'm flying by myself, like just in the plane, when I'm not online, I'm totally off internet, like can focus for 5, 6 hours. Sometimes I feel like so rejuvenated. I feel tired getting off the plane, but I'm rejuvenated work wise, and it's such a well, it's a gift because when you're busy at home, this thing
Yes,
and the respite is the thing that is like even if it's between meetings, it's super important.
exactly. I admire you, because I have to say I'm out like a light on a plane. That is my sleeping time.
Really? Oh,
Yes, I need to sleep.
I can only do that depending on the trip. Like it really depends. If
Fair.
I have to be really tired if it's not if international trips, I do that, but national trips, I usually am like working on the plane.
Yeah, it's true. I'm thinking international. That's fair. That's fair.
Between Nairobi, Geneva, and New
Yeah.
York. Right, that's a far distance. So how would you say human connection has shaped your work specifically?
I think human connection is my work. That
Mhm.
is what we do on a daily basis, is trying to bring people together around different ideas and topics and passions. So I feel like I'm inspired by it. It defines what we do, and we're just surrounded by groups of creators, which is wonderful, because creators, I feel like, know how to connect people almost better than anyone else. You're a creator, and you know how to bring people together in this way. And whether you're working with artists or chefs or fashion designers, as we do, or even local governments, in Sweden, who are looking to community build, it's all around making connections through their various fields and lenses of study. So I
Yeah,
guess it's in everything we do. Just
absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. I think it's also sometimes the best stuff is in the disparate parts that you can bring together that don't really connect, but to totally connect when you're actually, you know,
very true. So true.
bring them forward. So the past 2 years, I would say, have been really interesting and for the arts, right? We've got the blockchain stuff that's kind of completely gone, I don't want to say awry, but it's become
Yeah.
prevalent. It's become very mainstream. We've had COVID, which put a lot of like nonprofit organizations at risk of not being able to operate. There's been such a shift in the market in terms of the arts, but at the same time, the shift in the general economy has actually been kind of an upward trajectory. So I'm really curious. What are you seeing shift right now? Like, what are some of the things that you guys are thinking about that are going to be shaping the way that you guys are thinking about the strategy of absolute art, or even just in the art world in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. There's so much that has changed. I would say a few things. One, the devastation that COVID had around the art world it was catastrophic. And I think the one perhaps light there was that a lot of the community came together to really rally around raising money, especially for our beloved not-for-profits. At Absolute Art, we did editions with Murakami and Lawrence Weiner to raise money for the kitchen, for example.
Mhm.
But it was actually quite heartening to see that those who were doing well rallied around those that perhaps were struggling. And I think that really spoke to the community element that exists in the art world that sometimes gets lost in all the glitz and glamour, but actually at its core, everyone, I think, has a lot of heart around what they do and supporting that. The other really positive change is, the art world is, as wonderful as it was pretty archaic and quite brick and mortar,
Mhm.
and was sort of slowly but surely coming online. But I have to say, light years behind any other industry that you can think about. But what COVID has done is really accelerated that behavior, not only of the consumer to come online and purchase art online, but also the appetite of gallerists and artists to come online. And when I say accelerated, I mean by like, I would estimate by 7 to 10 years, because it was out of necessity, right? And that, I think, will reap incredible benefits moving forward. People have been forced to change their behavior and their comfort level online, which has just made it more democratic. Part of what that means is prices are accessible now, right? When you have it online, artists are more apt to going online and making a career and a name for themselves. Collectors are more open to purchasing and discovering and trying things online. So I think that we're going to see the benefits for many years to come. It has been a direct result of COVID. If anything, I see the future of the art world being a real hybrid of in-person and digital activations. I think the in-person is always going to be critical, but I think now that there is an openness and a willingness to bring in digital, it's going to be elevated in a really special way. And then lastly, just to touch on the NFTs, I think what this time has also brought about is artists taking power back into their own hands, which is incredibly heartening to see. And with technologies like the blockchain, like NFTs, artists are able to really reap the benefits of their work through sale after sale after sale, getting a cut of it, and having that provenance very openly available. So I think that technology, the fundamentals of that technology are really interesting, to keep the art world vibrant on its toes.
Totally. I mean, I think I've had more conversations around people buying art that are not in the arts, that are like completely. I mean, my cousin, for example, who, I don't know, he's a product guy. And he's like, I'm buying a bunch of NFTs just because like I really like these artists. I know what they're doing. I've been following their work for years, and I'm like, huh. And he's like, you should really get into this. I'm like, and it took me a while to wrap my head around it because this was maybe like a year and a half ago.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know, this feels a little bit like risky, or it just felt different than acquiring art normally, right? You go to an art fair, you go to a gallery show, you just buy it there.
Yeah.
So it is, I think you're right. The behavior changes is drastic. And I love how quickly people jumped onto it too.
It's great.
Yeah, I think there's people that are skeptical for sure. But for the most part, it was like, wow, like we have to do this to support. We have to do it to like innovate really, and diversify our collections too, potentially, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fun. It's fun to have a new medium to play with and explore, and for artists to get, creative with. So I think that's great. And to be quite frank, I think because people were stuck at home, and this is less about, I suppose, NFTs versus physical work, but people started to understand the impact that their space has on their psyche, on their mental well-being.
Yes.
And there has been a huge uptick in the purchase of art for the home. And we're seeing that, in spades. We grew over 370% in our sales just because people, of course, are adopting purchasing artwork online, but also understanding the impact that can have on your everyday, which is wonderful.
Oh, absolutely. That's a big one too. Oh, I can go on about that one for a long time,
Yeah.
but we have to jump to our rapid fire. So
Yes.
we're going to go quickly through the next couple of questions. So when do you feel most connected to others?
I probably feel most connected to others when I'm helping them in some way or in service to them in some way. And, I think about even just my daughter, and when I'm just even something like helping her put on her shoes. I'm not talking about anything incredibly epic, or helping my grandma reach a bowl because, we're like Russian dolls in our family. But I think when I feel most connected to people, when there is a level of just wanting to help and have nothing else on your mind, but connect with them on that level to make their life a little bit easier.
I love that. It's beautiful. And when and where are you happiest?
At home with my family. I feel like that's probably obvious by now. But yeah.
Any particular geography, or just wherever is home at that moment?
I mean, I guess home is wherever the family is, but there are different rooms in different places. So there is one room in Nairobi, for example, that has a fireplace, and there are no chairs. There are only things on the floor for everyone to sit down on. And that place, I'd say I love being there with family with the fire
Mm.
on and, drinking chai and having some snacks is great.
Ah, that's beautiful. What intersection of disciplines are you currently most fascinated by?
Honestly, I continue to be interested in the intersection of commerce and emerging technologies,
Mhm.
especially as it relates to culture. Of course,
Naturally
NFTs
speaking,
being
yeah.
one of them, but just really how we experience commerce in general,
Mhm.
I think is super exciting. Not only because of the fun things you can do with it, but also because it's making people really think about the stories behind what is being sold, the craftsmanship, the people, the places, and that is what technology affords us the ability to do, whether it's through video or live chats or experiential moments. It really allows that story behind the product to come out, and I'm super fascinated by that.
Hmm. That's awesome. What is your greatest regret?
Yeah. Um, so the greatest regret I would say is maybe something I still regret doing, which is not being present enough in the moment, always thinking about what's next, what's next. I feel like it's become much better with after having a baby
Mm.
because they force you to be present in the
Yeah.
moment. But yeah, I think maybe not really enjoying part of the incredible ride that life has afforded, I guess, all of us. And I think back to some times where I remember being stressed and I look at it now and be like, why were you not enjoying that moment? Why?
I'm so with you in that. That is exactly like the struggle. That's my
Yeah,
struggle too.
it's real. Struggle's real.
It is. And it's always this moment of it's like you have to keep yourself in check. So you kind of have to be outside of yourself, right? To create that space for yourself to be present and then
Yeah,
stop yourself when you can't.
it's work.
And it's very hard. Yeah.
It's work. Yeah.
And the last question is what's the one thing you wish to pass down to your daughter or to the next generation?
I would love to pass down, I would guess, the art and the practice of gratitude. I
Mhm.
think that is something that has been really transformational in my own life, and I feel can be transformational in any situation, no matter what situation you find yourself in. These moments are sort of finding gratitude, not in a cliche way, but in a real, thoughtful, nourishing way. If I could just, I mean, and it takes practice. So if I could just give that as a inborn piece of information to our next generation to sort of start building that from a very young age,
Mm.
I would love to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so important. And it's a cumulative effect.
100%.
It's really interesting. I'm like, you think, oh yeah, well, I am grateful. And then you start doing these
Yeah.
exercises and it does transform. Just reminded me that I have a similar thing with my daughter too. I really want to get her to appreciate and understand and know that who she is and what she has and all of that is very precious, you know?
It's so precious, and it's in the smallest of moments. I always tell her when we're playing, I'm like, Mama loves playing with Naya. Mama's so happy playing with Naya. Just those
Mhm.
moments. It's not, just to be. Maybe it's
Yeah,
part of the whole being present thing. But we're all trying.
we are. We are. Well, it was awesome to do this with you.
You
Thank you
too. I
again. This
love
was great.
your mind and the things that you bring together. So such a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you.